What you'll notice in this week's archaeological news is that there are several stories featuring DNA analyses, which have helped to shed further light on details about the ancient past. The technology is mind-blowing, but so are the discoveries, especially when it comes to Neolithic migration patterns. But my headline story this week is not about the DNA. It's about the recently published monograph on the Neolithic carved stone balls from Scotland. I really wanted to highlight this book because it's a monumental study into these strange and ancient artefacts. So join me as I discuss the latest news stories from the world of archaeology. Monograph on the Carved Stone Balls of Late Neolithic Scotland out now. A book has recently been published by Dr. Chris Stewart Moffat, an honorary research fellow at the University of Aberdeen, which details his comprehensive 7-year-long research on the Neolithic carved stone balls from Scotland, entitled The Circular Archetype in Microcosm, the Carved Stone Balls of Late Neolithic Scotland. The book is available as an open access PDF, but can also be purchased as a print edition. I've put a link to the publisher below. More than 400 of these carved stone balls have been found so far, mainly in the northeast of Scotland. They measure less than 10 centimetres in diameter, and many of them have some sort of knobs or protrusions on them, and are decorated in a variety of ways, including spirals and geometric designs. As with many Neolithic monuments and artefacts, it's not known what their function was. Every single ball so far discovered is discussed in the monograph, whether it's in a private or a public collection. The book also goes into a lot of detail on the geology and prehistory of Scotland and on the megalithic sites and objects that are connected to the stone balls. There's so much in there and it's definitely worth a read. I'll be doing a video on these carved stone balls because they are unique and they are Neolithic, which, as we know, was a very interesting time in Scotland. But in the meantime, I just wanted to let you know about this book because it's an absolute masterpiece. Ancient watermelons were originally collected for their seeds. A study published in the journal Molecular Biology and Evolution sequenced the genomes of 6,000 and 3,000-year-old watermelon seeds from Libya and Sudan, as well as those from herbarium collections dating to between 1824 and 2019. It's known that watermelons originally had a bitter pulp before being domesticated to produce a sweet flesh, but up until now, researchers haven't been able to establish when or where this change took place. The study found that the seeds in Neolithic Libya were from a non-domesticated variety, so their flesh would have been very bitter tasting and not really edible. It's thought that they were actually collected for their seeds, which could be cooked and eaten or added to other foods. Further supporting evidence came in the form of seed damage consistent with being chewed by human teeth. Seeds in wild watermelons lacked the bitterness of the pulp because they didn't contain the cucurbitacin chemical. The eventual domestication of the watermelon took place in the Nile Valley more than 4,000 years ago. At least by 2360 BCE, iconography in ancient Egypt shows the watermelon being eaten as a dessert. Thousands of ancient artifacts found at Gre Fılla Höyük in Turkey. It's been reported that during the last 4 years, excavations at the mound known as Gre Fılla Höyük in Diyarbakir, Turkey, have recovered 2,687 artifacts from the site. Recently, 3 pit-bottomed enclosures were also discovered, with one of these containing stelae dating to the pre-pottery Neolithic between 12,000 and 11,000 years ago, so contemporary with Göbekli Tepe. I couldn't find any open source photographs of the site, but I've put a link to really good video footage by News Findi next to the source for the story in the description below. Take a look at that after my video though. The 4 stelae acted as pillars which supported the roof of the structure. Altars and figurines were also found inside one of the enclosures. Like many pre-pottery Neolithic sites in Turkey, Gre Fılla Höyük has the typical circular enclosures, and it's likely, based on the finds, that some sort of rituals took place there. The 2,687 artifacts excavated from the site cover several time periods, not just the pre-pottery Neolithic, and include grinding stones, whetstones, and tools, many of which will be displayed at the Diyarbakir Museum, with others being used for research. The nearby settlements of Amberhöyük and Kendali Hekala were first settled later than Gre Fılla Höyük in the early Neolithic age. Neolithic fertility pottery found in the Czech Republic. The Brno Daily reports that archaeologists and students from Masaryk University in the Czech Republic have discovered a clay sculpture and an Iron Age tomb while working at a site in the Zojmo district. This site is made up of an early farmer's house and quarry used to extract clay for its construction. The clay sculpture dates to the Neolithic and has been identified as a ram. There is evidence the figurine was damaged on purpose, so it's possible it was used for some sort of fertility ritual. Central Europe has not yielded any evidence of shrines or temples dating to the Neolithic period, even though these are abundant in southeastern Europe and the Near East. So it's likely that any rituals that did take place were carried out in or close to domestic dwellings. Areas may have been demarcated specifically for this purpose. As well as the Neolithic statuette, a Hallstatt tomb from the Iron Age was discovered, which contained pottery, bronze jewellery, an iron knife, and meat. The archaeological site has been undergoing excavations and research for more than 50 years, and these new finds add a great deal to the experts' understanding of this multi-period settlement. At the laboratories of the Institute of Archaeology and Museology, analyses will now be carried out on the artefacts. Bronze Age high-status burials discovered in Hungary. Archaeologists excavating a site near Mani in Hungary prior to the construction of a motorway there have discovered 8 high-status burials dating to the Bronze Age. One grave contained the remains of a young woman buried with 38 gold and bronze artefacts, including rings, torques, armlets, and a herring, as well as ceramic pots. These objects not only identify the grave as a high-status burial, but also give further information on what the Bronze Age people there wore and how sophisticated their knowledge of metalworking was. The researchers think there are more objects to be excavated. Remains of a Bronze Age settlement were also found, as well as one from the Arpad period, which dates between the 9th and 10th centuries. Clay may have caused societal transformations in Bronze Age Crete. At the end of the 3rd millennium BC, social and political structures in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Near East underwent significant changes. Both the Egyptian Old Kingdom and the Akkadian state collapsed. Aegean societies on the Greek mainland declined, and the Minoan culture on Crete was transformed into the old palace culture. Various factors have been put forward as explanations for these changes, such as the 4.2 KABP climatic event. A new study published in Current Biology suggests that infectious diseases may also have contributed to these societal transformations. Since DNA is not often well preserved in warm climates, up until now, ancient evidence for the presence of the plague bacterium Yersinia pestis was limited to temperate regions. However, Neolithic and Bronze Age burials in the Hagios Charalambos cave in Crete have yielded very well preserved human aDNA. Researchers analysing these burials found genetic evidence for both Yersinia pestis and Salmonella enterica. Since these burials date to the time the societal changes took place in Crete, it's possible that infectious diseases were one of the causes. And, by extension, it's possible that they also contributed to the collapses seen in the rest of the Eastern Mediterranean and the Near East in that period. New mitochondrial study identifies migration patterns in Neolithic Greece. A recent study published in Scientific Reports sought to understand more about European expansion along the Danubian axis during the Neolithic. Up until now, experts have found evidence for the immigration of early Neolithic farmers into Europe via both a maritime and a mainland route, but further research was needed to confirm this. It was also known that Neolithization had started in Greece around 6,700 BCE. The study analysed 42 mitochondrial paleogenomes from Greece, 328 mitochondrial sequences from Europe dating from the early to the final Neolithic, and 319 modern sequences. A similar haplogroup frequency was found in Greece during the early, the middle, the late, and the final Neolithic, which shows cultural continuity during this long period of time. The results then suggest population discontinuity sometime between the Neolithic and present-day Greece, with a genetically different group moving into the Aegean. This is possibly because of migrations in the Bronze Age from the Caucasus and the Pontic-Caspian steppe. The study also found that Neolithization spread along the Danube route from the Aegean through a relatively rapid migration and assimilation with hunter-gatherers in the region from the Middle Neolithic onwards. That's it, let's discuss. The last study is interesting because the spread of agriculture in the Neolithic, the diffusion of megalithism, and the spread of Indo-European languages are three things that must be related to the movements of people. However, these three phenomena are little understood. There appears to have been a movement westwards, but there are so many gaps and anomalies. The site in Turkey is fascinating. It seems that pre-pottery Neolithic Anatolia was a hive of activity, and I'm excited to see what else all these excavations bring up. Multi-period sites are especially interesting because it's curious to see how different cultures repurposed previous buildings and whether they held them in reverence or simply used them for their functional attributes. From that, we can learn if there was any kind of cultural continuity. To be honest, I'm not that bothered about the history of the watermelon, but the science behind such discoveries is very interesting, and it does teach us about the everyday life of Neolithic people in these regions. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget to hit the like button. Come and find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram if you want more ancient history content. I post there regularly. I'm also on Patreon, so thank you to my patrons. Also, take a look at my website for more information on the sites I visit myself and the articles that I write, megalithhunter.com.